The yamas are 5 restraints which regulate one's relationship with other beings. They are ahimsa or nonviolence, satya or truthfulness, asteya or non-stealing, brahmacharya or abstinence from sensual indulgence, and aparigraha or non-possessiveness. Ahimsa literally means non-hurting or non-violence. One normally thinks of violence only in terms of physical violence, and most people in civilized societies refrain from gross acts of physical violence. Ahimsa, however, refers to nonviolence in thought and word as well as in deed. Violence in speech or in actions is almost always preceded by violent thoughts. Violent thoughts have serious repercussions on the mind and on the body and should be avoided if only for this reason. On the positive side, careful cultivation of ahimsa leads to a spontaneous, all-encompassing love towards all creation. One begins to see the unity in all creation and thus progresses towards the goal of self-realization. Satya or truthfulness is an essential part of all codes of morality in all societies. One should be truthful to oneself and to others in thought, word, and deed. As most people know, one lie inevitably leads to another. Soon deception becomes second nature and leads to a fearful and scheming mind. It is said that if one makes truth the central focus of his life, all his utterances will come true, for such a one is incapable of untruth. Asteya or non-stealing includes refraining from misappropriation, the acceptance of bribes, and the like. The desire for what another owns can be very strong. The mind, when possessed by this desire, is capable of little else. Such an attitude of mind is based on underlying feelings of inadequacy and jealousy, a sense of having been cheated and a desire for retribution. One is haunted by the thought that someone else has what I need to feel complete and fulfilled. But stealing an external object does not get rid of the basic sense of inadequacy. So one surreptitiously takes again and again, but the underlying feelings remain. Cultivating asteya counteracts such attitudes. It helps to develop a sense of completeness and sufficiency, and leads to freedom from the bondage of such cravings. Brahmacharya literally means to walk in Brahman, or the Supreme. One who cultivates this yama is therefore aware of Brahman alone. Such a state is possible only if the mind is free from all sensual desires. Of all sensual desires, the sexual urge is the most powerful and the most destructive. Brahmacharya is, therefore, often translated as abstinence from sex or celibacy. In reality, it refers to continence, applying either to celibacy or married life. Sexual excesses lead to dissipation of vital energy, which could, instead, be used to attain deeper states of consciousness. Brahmacharya should not be interpreted as repression of all sensual urges. Such repression only leads to frustration in an abnormal state of mind. Brahmacharya means control of and freedom from all sensual cravings. The bliss that accompanies self-realization is far greater than any transient sensual pleasure. One whose goal is self-realization would therefore overcome the obstacles of sensual cravings without any kind of suppression. Aparigraha or non-possessiveness has been misunderstood to mean denying oneself of all material possessions. But as is the case with each of these restraints, this practice is essentially an inward attitude rather than an outward appearance. It involves not being addicted to or dependent on one's possessions, rather than the outward denial of them. A beggar can be more attached to his begging bowl than a king is to all his treasures. The danger lies not in having material possessions, but in becoming attached to them or in craving more. H.H. Sri Swami Rama.
Okay, so the wedding has taken place. All the couples have returned back to Ayodhya, and there's this period of bliss. There's this period of happiness, of just this joy. And if you think about that, that is very much when we start doing a practice and things start falling into place and we start knowing ourselves better. There is this period of bliss. There is this period of joy that happens. And so at this point now, King Dashrata decides that he wants Rama to be crowned as king. And this is really important because this is the highest meaning ideal in the entire Ramayana, for Rama to be crowned king. And if we think about that for ourselves, that is when the soul, the inner dweller, emerges, and we're no longer controlled by the ego. We're no longer controlled and whipped around by the 10 senses. So King Dashrata is the one who has mastered, right, the 10 senses. So at this point now, it's like, yeah, I want the soul to come forward. But this is really, really important. It can't happen until it's time. It can't happen until we have done all of our work. We can't become one with the one. We can't until we have done everything that we have to do. And this is where so the inner dweller knows everything that's happening. So the king this is where at this point now, the gods in heaven become worried because they're thinking, wait, what if Rama is king and he doesn't fulfill his duty to slay the last of the demons? This is for us, right? We can't become completely free from this connection to this, from this birth and death cycle until all of the demons have been eradicated. It just can't happen. So now the inner dweller comes forward because we've done our practice. We've been doing our practice. Things are moving, but we're not completely free from this transmigration of the soul. So the inner dweller, Saraswati, decides to look for someone who has the ability to have a petty mind and someone who has their intellect can be twisted, their intellect can be perverted. So she finds Mantara, who is the maidservant, and she knows that Mantara can pervert Kaikeyi's mind. So now, once again, if you think about it within yourself, so Mantara is very petty. She has been holding on to these grudges for however many lifetimes, right? But she's been holding on to something, and she's petty because she wants what she wants. So Saraswati goes forward, and because Saraswati is the goddess of language, so she seizes Mantara, and then Mantara goes, because now everyone in the kingdom they're so happy that Lord Ram is going to be crowned king. They're beside themselves. This is the greatest moment ever. This is that moment where we're moving towards the goal, and there's freedom right there, and we've cultivated this incredible viveka and vairagya, this dispassion and this discrimination. We have this so much, and that we're right there. But lurking underneath, right, there's always these little demons ready to pop up. So Mantara hears the news, and she's very agitated. She's very angry about this. And she goes to Kaikeyi, and she says, "Have you heard the news?" And she says, "What news?" And she says, "Lord Ram is going to be crowned king." And she's ecstatic. This is wonderful. This is so fabulous. This is great. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe this is wonderful. The day has finally come. And now Mantara's like, wait, we didn't want this to work out like this. So then she starts telling Kaikeyi, well, you know what's going to happen when Ram becomes king? Then Kaushalya, you're going to become the maidservant to Kaushalya, and you're going to have to do these, and you're going to have to clean the floors, and the king's never going to come to see you. So she had been harboring this jealousy towards Kaushalya, towards Ram's mother. And Mantara plays on that. So when it was Bharat going to be king, or not Bharat going to be, but when it was Ram going to be king by him, that was great. But when she thought that it impacted her tune changed. Then she didn't want Ram to become king. How many times have we been in situations where something we thought, oh wow, this is great, this is fabulous, and then a little seed is planted, and suddenly the mind changes. Actually, we've just all experienced something like that. So we have this. So Mantara played on her jealousy. She knew that she could twist that because self-preservation. Self-preservation is the highest. I'm not going to be a maidservant. Wait, I'm not going to clean the floors. I'm not going to be ousted. So just that little bit was enough to change that within her. So this is when we have to be very mindful, because we have these little demons lurking behind the scenes of wanting to, the ego. The ego just likes to be protected. The ego likes to be, this is me, this is I, that's mine. And we've talked about this so many times before. Self-preservation is it's the hardest. It's the hardest. Then it goes back to the ahimsa and the satya, right? I'm so concerned about preserving my identity that I'm willing to lie. I'm so concerned about people thinking this way of me, I lie about who I am. I'm so concerned about doing that. I need, right, this whole thing, like this ahimsa. I need to preserve who I am. So let me send Rama to the forest. Let me send Sita to the forest. Right? I'm willing to do acts of violence to preserve me. Which is why we go back. If we can't be trusted in the small things, we certainly can't be trusted in the big things. So this whole thing with the Ramayana and Rama becoming king, this is the soul stepping forward, right? This is that complete integration of our personality. Because we cannot be fully integrated as long as we have these hidden defects inside of us, these hidden little demons that we're trying to slay. And this is where the practice comes in, because if we saw all of our demons right from the beginning, it would feel so overwhelming. Why would I even want to? I can't do this, right? The effort to change would be, that we would perceive, would be way too much. Forget it. I'm just going to live my life the way it is. But when we do practice, it's really amazing. We start to see ourselves a little bit more clearly. But not only do we see ourselves a little bit more clearly, we can love ourselves through that. So I can see myself and see myself as being petty. I can see myself as being jealous. I can see myself as lying. But then when I start to get into that and really wanting to understand my samskaras, I can love myself through that. Because we start to get rid of that shame and that guilt associated with all of our behaviors. So as long as we still have shame and we still have guilt and we still lie and hide behind things, or we still manipulate things, we can't move forward. We will never move forward. But anyway, so the whole process of the spiritual practices, so that we can slay the demons. So we start small, like with little demons, and we slay them, and then we start to gain more power. We start to feel more empowered. We start to have more understanding. So then we have power to slay more demons. Because like I said, it would just be way too much if we looked at ourselves right from the beginning and saw everything. If we saw, oh my gosh, I've manipulated people this way for the last 50 lifetimes. How am I ever going to eradicate this? How am I ever going to get rid of this behavior? But if I can see where I'm doing something immediately, and then I can pause and go, okay, because that's what we want to do. That's what we want, to get to that place where we can see ourselves before we start doing that same behavior, that samskara, and then we stop right there. So it goes back to the beginning. We have to start looking at ourselves. We have to be very vigilant with what we say. We have to be on it all the time. Why did I say that? Or, oh, I just lied about that. What if when we lie about something, if we pause and say, you know what, I just lied. I didn't eat an avocado. Or whatever it is, right? What if we just pause and catch ourselves and then admit it right then and there? Then it gives us more power, because then we become more aware of our speech. Because how many times have, we've done these violent acts and we know we're doing a violent act, but we don't stop. But what if we stop and say, you know what? Let me pause here. Let me rethink this. Then we become more aware of what those things are, because we want to be fully integrated. How can Ram come forward? How can our inner dweller have any say within us if we're stuck with this perverted intelligence? We're stuck with this thinking my self-preservation is more important. Like Kaikeyi, her self-preservation was more important. She was okay with Ram until her self-preservation got dented. And then it was no longer okay. Any questions? No. No? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how easy it is. Mm-hmm. Because somewhere that's why it goes back to the company we keep is so important. So, so very important. Because, we've all been in those situations where we're moving along and then we talk to someone and then suddenly we're like, oh, yeah, wait. And then suddenly, yeah, we have that doubt. And then suddenly we think that person, oh, yeah, you're right. That person is really bad. So keeping aware of the company we keep is so important. So, so very important, because we've had lifetimes of doing things a certain way, right? So if I can see that I have 50 lifetimes of manipulating, or 50 lifetimes of lying, or 50 lifetimes of stealing, or whatever it is, right? Then if I get in company that pulls that up, it's there. It's just there. There's no reason to blame ourselves or to be angry at ourselves or to be agitated at ourselves. It's just like, oh, okay, it's great, actually. This is why the Ramayana is so powerful, because it's just showing, if we think about all of these characters within ourselves, we all have Mantara in us. We all have this petty-minded being inside of us. We all have this ability to have our intelligence perverted. That's in all of us. If it wasn't, we wouldn't be here trying to work it out in this lifetime. So why should we be ashamed of it? Why should we ridicule it? Why should we be full of doubt about it? Just own it. And then it gives us so much more power and freedom. And then it becomes really, really, really beautiful.